guys, welcome back to another video. So no, it is not Monday, but I have an itch that I really need to scratch, which is, you guys know that Masaki is like my most favorite OC and he's just like my sweet boy, but I have had this thought in my brain for the last, I don't even know, a few weeks that I want to make my ideal OC, or at least like an OC that I've always wanted to make for a super long time. Not gonna lie, Art Fight definitely fueled this a lot more, but here's kind of like a sneak peek or kind of like the initial look at the OC that I always wanted to have, or like I feel like it feels natural for me to have for a lot of like my drawing habits or aesthetics. So the doodle on the very left is actually the very first drawing that I did and is kind of like the initial design that I think I'm going to stick with. This second spread, which you are viewing right now, kind of has like me doing some color testing to figure out the color palette that I want. As you can see, I'm going with navy blue and yellow, or maybe peach or white or black and white. I am not too sure. All I know is that his hair is probably going to be navy blue. He's going to have a little bit of yellow, white, or like cream and peach or something mixed into it. We'll figure out the color palette in a different video. So other than OC talk or original character talk, I am going to be showing you guys a little bit more of me using screen tones, because I found my Xacto blade the other day, which I was using to cut something because I cannot for the life of me find my box cutter. But the Xacto knife has a new blade. So I saw that maybe I should take this opportunity to use my screen tones once again because it's nice and sharp right now. So it'd be the perfect opportunity. For sketching, I am going to be using the Unidia color, kind of like in the blue, kind of like the dark blue, I guess. So it's like what the color I was using initially for the sketches. I also don't use screen tones as much. Whenever I have done a lot more like inking or comics in my sketchbook recently, I gravitate towards using like gray tones or like a monochromatic look by using alcohol markers and sticker paper to kind of achieve the look. But I thought it'd be fun today to do a little bit more of a deep dive back into inking once again. And using screen tones is always fun, so let's go back into that. Also, I placed my coaster underneath the right-hand side of my sketchbook because my sketchbook's at that point where there's more pages on one side than the other, so every time I sketch on it, it kind of like slants, which is not great because it might warp the perspective even more, so I like to keep it somewhat level, and my coaster is right now the perfect size for it, so that's what I am currently going to be using to kind of level out my pages. So I think the first few steps before we get to actually doing any screen toning is pretty much going to be pretty standard of me doing like sketchbook things in my sketchbook in a way. So I am going to be sketching with the blue. We're going to be doing kind of like a spread. So I'm going to have two different drawings. They're very much heavily separated by the seam in the middle, which I don't mind for this, but we're going to do kind of like a close-up headshot so I can get a little bit more detail, and then we're going to do kind of like a half body waist up on the left-hand side. After that, I will switch over and use some fine liners to do our inking. I will also use some of my calligraphy pens to help me block in some of the darker areas where I want more like the flat blacks instead of having like any hatching or having the screen tones kind of sit there. So while I go through both the sketching and the inking process for, I guess, like kind of the first drawing on the right, my brain's like a little confuzzled right now, so please excuse me. But let's talk about this OC. So right off the bat, I had sketches of both my old OC Selwyn. It's not even an old OC, he's like the newest one technically, but he's not been fleshed out, nor have I done anything with this character at this point. So I actually think that this new character that I'm drawing today is going to become Selwyn. They share very similar color palettes, so I think I'm just going to transfer that name to this character, and the other, some features might transfer over, some other features might not, so we'll see what happens. But basically, Kaisen and both Selwyn were technically made around the same time. Selwyn was made from my friend's P crew, where she made us kind of like, well, she tagged us, and then you're able to make your own OC using like a specific P crew that she wanted us to use to make like a fantasy-ish OC that goes to like a magical school and has like an animal companion. So I made Selwyn, and he had like a little seal companion because I thought that would be cute. But not gonna lie, because I was like very new to P Crew, technically, I just kind of like haphazardly placed certain like features or like accessories or color palettes on him without really having like an actual preference for what I wanted the character to look like. So he was kind of just made up on the spot really roughly. And then after that, I started to make Kaisen. I'll put a picture on the screen of what Kaisen currently looks like right now in comparison to kind of like the rough drafts. So Kaisen as an OC was actually supposed to be one kind of like a friend to Masaki, because I've always wanted him to have some sort of like companion, because a lot of my other OC seems like they had a little bit more of like stronger bonds with each other, and then Masaki only had like Koji with like a brotherly relationship rather than like a peer, I guess, kind of relationship. So Kaisen is like similar-ish age to Masaki, and they kind of run the same circle. So it's like I wanted him to have some sort of friend within the same age range, if you know what I mean. Because like right now he only has Koji, who's like significantly younger and it's kind of like family to him. But in terms of like visually speaking for Kaisen, I already had the idea that I wanted him to be at least like a fluffy dark-haired OC, if that makes sense. So, and I was initially going to give him glasses, but all of those kind of like pinpoint a little bit closer to Wonu from 17, who's somebody I've always loved. The way he looks, his demeanor, like everything about him. So I didn't really want to make an OC based off of a real person. It just feels wrong and strange. So I wanted to like distance myself away from it. So the initial sketches that I had for Kaisen actually had almost a similar look to what Wonu looks like from the first time they were going to perform Getting Closer at an award ceremony. So Wonu had like very curly or wavy hair. It was kind of messy and very fluffy and very cute. He also had like big round black glasses. He was wearing like a turtleneck, and I think he was wearing either a suit jacket or a leather jacket, depending on, I think, whether or not they were waiting or like performing. And I can't say that like Wonu, me being a fan of Wonu, kind of like shaped part of my preferences in like male characters by any means. I do have like some that are very consistent. So like if we talk about aesthetics only, my VTuber Oshis from like Niji Sanji specifically are Ike Eveland, Alba Nox, and then from JP is Kaida Haru. So they do have like more or less a softer-ish demeanor for the most part. I think Alban has like a soft personality. His face, probably because he's supposed to be like a phantom thief, he had more of like a cooler demeanor or aesthetic to him initially. Once those shades come off, he's like very cute. Technically, the way how like I view the characters, they're all like demeanor wise very soft. I also like the way that their hair kind of like frames their face, which happens to be my preference, I guess, in terms of like how I want the hair to be for my OC. So I wanted something that frames the face nicely and kind of like soft, probably bangs that kind of like come fairly close to the eyes, as well as just like fluffy texture, because I do have like specific flyaways or like extra hair swishes and swooshes, whatever you want to call them, that flick out from the head to give a little bit more texture or movement. So there's like a lot of natural hand movements that I do to achieve those particular little flyaways and stuff. So I want this character to just naturally have them, because they'll make it a lot easier for me to draw them. And I want this character to be a character that I draw a lot in the future, and this is very comfortable for me to draw, if that makes sense. So even though I talked about characters like or not characters, I guess VTubers like Ike Eveland, Albanox, Kaida Haru, they have like lighter, more neutral, warmish hair color. But not only that, is it like on the warmer side, it's like brown, a light brown, an olivey tone kind of esque area for their color of hair. But for me, I do gravitate towards darker haired characters typically, or black haired characters. So I knew I wanted this character to either have like black hair, or I was gonna go with like a faded navy blue, maybe something of that sort. And then eye color is still going to be up in the air. I do want this character to have probably a gradation for their eyes. So I might go from maybe a bluish purple down to a golden yellow. We'll see what works. It might even go like towards peach. Whatever I end up playing around with when I start to do like a digital mock-up of this character will be kind of like the way how I'm going to finalize it. Usually when I plan out like color palettes for my characters, I do it in watercolor, which I did initially do for this character, or I do it with water-based markers, because if I want to doodle them, my criteria used to be that I would like to be able to doodle them with like 2 colors and still look somewhat recognizable. Okay, but like kind of back to the topic of what I wanted them to look like. So probably fluffy hair for the most part, on the darker-ish side in terms of the hair color. So right now when I was doing the inking process, I filled in the majority of his hair being black. And I think just value-wise, I'm going to go in that direction because I don't think I'm going to make them have light hair. I'm not too sure. We'll see. Most likely not, because I think I'm just full-on gonna just have a dark-haired OC like this, even though I know Kaisen also has dark hair. But hopefully they look different-ish enough that people don't be like, you just have 2 Kaisens. Don't do this to me. But not gonna lie, when I was doing the inking process, especially for this larger one of Selwyn, which I'm going to be calling him for the rest of this video, I kind of drew it the same way that I draw like Ike Evelyn's eyes, or at least like how I interpret them whenever I did end up drawing or doodling him from time to time. So there is a little bit of that, as well as like accessories or like the glasses is very much probably because I miss Ike, or at least drawing him. I miss it a lot. So yeah. Oh, process wise, so we're on to our screen toning. Now, I didn't really talk about this too much recently, but in previous videos I've talked about me buying screen tones initially for a friend as well as myself. I bought like exactly a dupe set for myself, and then I bought like certain types of screen tones for a friend. And the reason being is that I was going to give it to her as like a Christmas birthday gift, but I noticed recently, at the time at least, she was not really into art anymore, so it felt a little bit of a not appropriate gift because I don't think she would be able to really use it. It would just be more like the initial excitement, and then probably it's going to be stowed away. And I think it was kind of the right call because it's been like, I don't even know how many years, 3 years since then. She hasn't really done art, so I think it was kind of a good call to not accidentally give her a gift that she won't utilize or like long term, in a sense. So I do have dupes of my screen tones and I do plan to use them, but my goal when I started to use these ones today was that I wanted to use all of my scraps first as much as I can. And I think in the future, if I still do a lot more screen toning, I am going to try my best to use as much more of the scraps until we deplete it as much as possible before cracking into any of like the newer ones, because there's so many little scraps that are like triangle bits, little slivers that are perfect for like shadow under hair or like clothing folds, or like, I don't know, you'll see probably a little bit later when I do like a fast forwarding of the smaller one that you'll see me kind of like take pieces and see where they can fit. And a lot of the times you'll be surprised on what works out super well. Even this thing for the nose, it had like the perfect curve for the nose. I just cut out like the rest of like our triangle bit to match what I wanted. And technique wise, so if you're not familiar with using screen tones, basically it's like a pattern of dots, sometimes lines, or like a texture made up of just like black solid-ish lines or dots or whatever you want to call it, halftones, and they're basically printed on top of a transparent kind of like a sticker sheet almost, and you can stick it on top of like paper. You can cut it out and kind of like tear off, rip off, peel off any of the excess that you don't want, but the remaining kind of leaves this nice halftone quality that gives like a nice shadow or form to whatever you're working on. Now you can see me sometimes scraping away with my knife like I am doing right now, and you can kind of get a little bit of a softer edge or a gradation or whatever you want. I do this a lot in the eyes as well to give a little bit of a lighter look. Instead of like cutting out like a half circle, I like having a softer gradation or transition. Because these dots are like printed on the surface of our transparent sheet, you can easily scrape away the patterning, and then you scraping away the patterning, hopefully not taking out like super big chunks, you can actually get like a very nice subtle softer edge, which I like to use. So yeah, also you can see here, occasionally you can see me matching up certain areas and getting like little pieces where they match up really nicely with the edges, and then I just have to clean up an edge or two to make it fit completely. Other times I'm just taking these larger sheets like I am doing right now, placing it down and then cutting it right down to size. But the scraping technique is like one of my favorites to do, especially if you want to add like bounce light or just a softer edge like I mentioned earlier. But for the most part, super easy to understand, very hard to execute well, I guess. There's like a lot of places that have like misalignments. You can see on the fingers, there's some of the dots that I did not cut exactly on the line of the finger. So part of it's just because like I don't have patience to make sure everything is nice and precise. Other things is like I might be pressing down too hard, which you'll see later that I slice through my page a little bit, because if your blade is sharp enough, you can cut through the, I was gonna say sticker sheet, but I guess like the screen tone quite easily. So you actually don't need to press down super hard to have like a nice clean cut, as long as your blade is sharp. But for me, I'm also doing this on notebook paper. So I basically slice through the screen tone alongside with the paper near his hair-ish area, which you'll see at the very end. I'll show you the damage, but yeah, you don't need to press down too hard. Sometimes I feel like if you watch Gekkan Shoujo Nozaki-kun, I feel like Hori Senpai, because he, I guess, is heavy-handed and I accidentally cut through the page just like he did. Just not everywhere, so my whole entire drawing doesn't come apart. Back to the aesthetics portion for this character. So other than wanting to have like a fluffy-haired, dark-haired OC of some sort where, I don't know, I just really wanted a character that had like fluffier hair. Kaisen was like getting there to a certain extent, and every time like I draw more detailed illustrations of like Kaisen or Masaki, I guess Moriko might fall into this kind of category where I will end up like making their hair more wispy and have a lot of flyaways to kind of create more volume and or texture to their hair, because I draw their hair in such a particular way that seems like so stiff. But for this character, I wanted to have a lot of pieces that like kind of like fluff out and give a little bit more volume and texture that I do like naturally anyways when I have like certain habits of drawing hair, that's for sure. So that's like the main thing for the hair. Second, I love characters with glasses so much, so I definitely wanted this character to have glasses. I think the round glasses are always super cute, so I wanted to give the character that. I didn't want the glasses to be like super plain, so I had like the little star sparkle thing on his glasses, which will make a little bit more sense probably when I actually do like a proper reference sheet for him, because I want him to low-key have a little bit of a star-ish design on his aesthetic. So I don't know if I'll talk about this until like his design is final, because I don't even know if I'm going to use it. But I did I think it's like a draw, it's not even a draw this in your style, but it's more like a fashion one. And I did one where I combined kind of the idea of combining shooting stars aesthetic, or like the night sky-ish, like purples, blue gradations, yellow accents, kind of a little bit of blue in there, here and there, plus dark academia, because I love kind of like preppy clothes, but I like dark academia more. So I wanted this character to kind of follow a little bit into that section in terms of aesthetics. So I wanted to give him chunky cardigan of some sort, maybe like a sweater vest type thing. I don't know if it's gonna be like a sweater vest or if it's gonna be like a t-shirt sweater type of deal we're having here. I'm still debating a lot on the clothing, because I don't know if I want to give him like longer sleeve dress shirt with like certain type of cuffs, but then it doesn't make sense that he's wearing like 3 layers of clothing. So I don't know what exactly I want for this character. Maybe he will have 3 layers of clothing. I guess that's kind of how it looks like right now. But I wanted to have a little bit of like that dark academia by having a little bit more of like either tweed or plaid-ish kind of design that's more on the warmer-ish side. But I don't know if I want to go full on like brown autumny colors for him to be accompanied with the blues, because the whole aesthetic might be a little bit too dark. So my compromise was to make his cardigan white, because I love white clothing or like black clothing a lot when it comes to coloring. I love adding like any reflective color bouncing off of it into it, or like for white clothing I like adding both like blues, purples, plus like peaches and yellows into it to make it very vibrant and very spring-esque. So I'm gonna debate and deliberate between certain kind of color palettes for a little bit longer, but that's kind of like outfit wise is what I'm going to kind of lean towards in terms of that. I'm trying to think what other characters embody my preference more fully. I don't think there's like a specific character that like 100% fits that entirely, because I like Dan-Hung from Honkai Star Rail, but I also like characters, I guess like Finon, but he's more like buff, but he's like golden retriever-esque. So I don't know. He's like, I like that type as well. Okay, this is the only way I can kind of think about it as I'm quickly doing the line art for this particular sketch on the left-hand side, is that if there's a character between Venti and Zhongli, maybe that's what I'm looking for, and then slap glasses on them, and then that's kind of like my ideal. Because Venti, I don't know if I want this character to be like super duper bubbly. I know like the way that I drew him right now is going to be that way, but I want to give him a bit more of a softer demeanor. So I'm like tempted to either flatten out his eyes just a smidge, or to slant them downwards so that they're slightly more droopy, if that makes sense. Because if I slant them the other way, I feel like he's gonna look more like angry or eager, and I don't know if I want that. I want something more calming and I don't know, just like another sweet kind of soft character. Oh, I don't know if I talked about this. I don't think this character, or Selwyn in this case, is going to be part of Masaki's story. So I don't know if I'll really draw them interacting unless it's for like a meme or like some sort of drawing challenge type of thing. But I don't know if he's going to appear at all in Masaki's particular story. I wanted it to either be separate or for him to have zero story. It's just purely a character just for having fun playing around with aesthetics. And I think when I was doing, I think it's like an alcohol marker drawing, plus when I was doing the ideation for my flower OC zine, I was planning on having a female character, and she kind of has like short shoulder length hair that's like half updo, half updo, and she also has like black hair. She had like a more of like a moon aesthetic alongside with circle glasses, and she had more of like a light color palette. It was very much like black, white, and kind of like light rainbow in terms of like, I think it was like pink, blue to yellow in her eyes or whatever, something of that sort. But I think this character might low-key be stemming from that particular idea as well, because I think it's like all these iterations of me trying to create this character, and I don't know if this character is like the end-all be-all in terms of like, oh, it's the solution to the character that I feel like I've been missing this entire time. And I mentioned like Art Fight has like opened me up more to being, I don't know, wanting to draw my OCs a lot more. And I just want a character like this, I think. So I'm gonna keep playing around with this idea a little bit more and seeing kind of where it leads me to. Because I've also noticed that Akemi's siblings were low-key dancing around this character design a little bit too. So I try to keep Arakan's hair more similar to Akemi's hair, but then Anka's hair is very similar to that black-haired OC girl that I initially was going to draw for the flower OC zine. So they're all kind of like floating around the same idea. Also, their color palette, especially Arakan's, is like navy blue and kind of like gold and yellow and kind of like on the darker side. So I don't want this character to have too big of an overlap, which is kind of making me feel like I should either add like a lot of peach color or like pink and or beige, brown, and white. I don't know. I think navy blue or some sort of blue color palette and then associating that with like a softer brown color might work, or like a cream color would be nice, and then adding white. Or I don't know, navy top, white cardigan, beige pants. I don't know. We'll do like maybe a video in the future, or maybe not. We'll see. I'll either make a video talking about this character again when they're finally finalized and maybe we're doing the reference sheet, or I'll do a session where I will take you guys along with me and I will plan out the color scheme. because I like doing that both traditionally and digitally to see what works. Digitally, just because it's easier for you to mess around with colors just super quick, but traditionally it's because like I want to be able to sketch and draw them whenever I can and not just like be restricted to like having too much freedom in digital land, I guess. So I want to be able to draw them traditionally with the supplies that I have. So if as long as that's possible, then that'll be great. I don't remember where I said this. It might have been in this video earlier or maybe at a different point. But I feel like if Masaki, Kaisen, and Akemi merged into one character, that would be the ideal character for me. Personality-wise will be a little bit up in the air. I do think I just want like a soft character that's like very low key, but he's not like overly happy, nor is he like stern, if that makes sense. Kind of like Natsume a little bit from Natsume Yujincho. Just a little bit like that. I was gonna say like Danheng, but Danheng is a little bit more stern, so maybe not quite like that. But yeah, I don't know. This character's gonna be like a work in progress for quite a bit, but I will probably be doodling them in my sketchbook for quite a long time till I can figure something out. But other than that, I think as you guys are watching me do the screen toning for this particular drawing, you can kind of see that I keep going back and forth and testing certain pieces, taking them out, putting pieces back in, then cutting them to be the right size. I kind of do it back and forth to see what fits and what doesn't, and trying my best to use as many of the scraps as I could. There's some areas, like even this one, I was using like a bigger chunk because I was trying my best to see if I could add blush without making the screen tone stand out too much. So after I did this one and it looked kind of successful, we'll go ahead and go into the right cheek, and I'll show you guys in real time how I ended up doing the cheek portion. So I cut out just a random shape that would embody more or less the shape that I wanted. And then after that, we'll start to really buff out the edges. I also had to buff out that little design for his glasses. But as we start to really scrape off the little dots on our little screen tone, it got really soft and it looked kind of like more of a gradation. You can't really see where it kind of starts and stops in terms of like where the plastic is. So that's kind of nice that it's so transparent that it's not really noticeable. But here's kind of like the final look. You can still see some of the blue lines appearing in my little drawings today, but I don't really mind since it is in my sketchbook, and oftentimes if you take these to scan, you can always bump up the contrast or whatever and get rid of those lines super easily and then make everything nice and crisp and clear. So yeah, hopefully you guys didn't mind a super rambly video about kind of like, it's not an earworm. What do you call it? It's just like an urge or like a thought that I couldn't get out of my brain. Also, this is where like I really went through the paper, just trying to cut things. But for the most part, I don't think I did too bad with the screen toning this time. I definitely had a lot of fun using them, and you will see this character in the future, but hopefully they will be more fleshed out. I'm just gravitating towards that white cardigan, I think. I think it'll be fun. We'll see. I will come back. For now, they're going to be tentatively named Selwyn, but hopefully you guys enjoyed me doing like a rambly screen toning video, and I'll talk to you guys next time. What is happening here? Okay, bye!